We'll move to question time, and I call Senator Dean Smith.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator Ayres. Under coalition pressure, the Albanese government has finally released Volume 1 of the incoming government brief from the Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water. One redacted section notes, and I quote, "The DMO points to a further significant increase in retail electricity prices next financial year." End quote. Minister, will you be honest with Australians about how much power prices will continue to skyrocket and further impact Australian households and businesses?
Thank you, Senator Smith. Minister Ayres.
Well, thank you very much. And it's almost until the end, Senator Smith, almost to the end. I was about to say it's good to see, finally a sort of moderate question about the energy challenges that Australia faces. Couldn't resist the final little skyrocket. What Australia needs in electricity policy and energy policy is a sense of national purpose coming from this parliament, and confidence and certainty and stability. And that is what this government has provided over the course of the last 3 years. That's what this government has provided over the course of the last 3 years. We have acted both in substantial and structural terms as we seek to modernise Australia's electricity system, and we have sought to act to deal with some of these short-term questions, which is why we had price caps, why we had support for households. Now,
sorry, Senator Smith, I was momentarily distracted. Are you up on a point of order? Thank you.
Thank you, President. My question was very succinct. Will the minister be honest with Australians about how much power prices will continue to skyrocket and further impact households and businesses?
Thank you, Senator Smith. I do believe the minister is being relevant to the question, although it's a bit hard to hear because there was quite a bit of noise. But I will listen for the next 35 seconds, and if he's not relevant, I will draw him to the question. Minister.
I did say my question was very succinct. That's like me saying I am very thin. It's not really. I mean, honestly. Now there is serious work and a national challenge in making sure that we build a modern electricity system. Now, Senator Smith, I don't know who it was in your team who sought the incoming government brief. They've been provided it. It's been appropriately redacted, and that's the way the system works.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Smith, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Another redacted section of the brief advises that emissions reductions need to accelerate rapidly to meet the 2030 target, with a strong push needed to finalise your net zero plan. Minister, is this confirmation that Labor's renewables-only policy is failing?
Thank you, Senator Smith. Minister Ayres.
Well, that is indeed a misrepresentation. To describe the policy proposition being adopted by this government, in contrast to the sort of rabble beforehand, as renewables only. It is, of course, the cheapest form of power, renewables, plus batteries, plus hydro, plus gas. And if you can't conceive of what the policy proposition is, it's very difficult indeed to adequately respond to such a misconceived question. What is absolutely true is that we need additional capacity, generation and transmission into the system. There is a challenge there to build it. this government is meeting that challenge, and it'd be good if some of the sort of odder characters in your show got out of the way of transmission and generation
projects.
projects.
For answering has expired. Senator Smith, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, 97% of pages in the brief have been redacted at least partially, with nearly half of the pages totally redacted. The Department of Home Affairs incoming government brief, which objectively covers more sensitive information, was released with 76% of pages unredacted. What in this brief is so alarming to the Albanese government that you feel the need to hide
has expired. Minister Ayres.
Well, 97% is a stark figure indeed, Senator Smith. That is the number that is attached to the proportion of Australia's trading partners who have their own net zero targets. Like we are getting on with the job of modernising the electricity system. That is what we are doing. That is what we are doing.
Senator Smith.
My question was very succinct. What in this brief is so alarming to the Albanese government that they feel the need to hide it?
Thank you, Senator Smith. And you also talked about percentages and a number of pages which were redacted, and the minister is being relevant to the question. Minister Ayres.
I'm delighted to support making sure we get absolutely relevant. 97% is right. 97% is right. And what this government has embarked upon, it stands in stark contrast to what happened before. Disinvestment, degeneration of our capacity in industrial terms and electricity terms, 4 gigawatts out of the electricity system, only 1 gigawatt over the 9 miserable years of the Abbott-Turnbull-Morrison experiment. We've seen what happens.
Thank you, Minister Ayres. The time for answering has expired. Before I come to you, Senator Whittaker, I am delighted to inform the parliament we have 2 delegations here. The first delegation is the parliamentary delegation for the France-Australia Friendship Group of the French National Assembly. On behalf of all senators, I wish you a warm welcome to Australia and in particular to the Senate. And our second delegation is from the European Parliament, led by the Chair, Mr Sean Kelly. And once again, on behalf of all senators, I wish you a warm welcome to Australia and in particular to the Senate. Are you seeking the call, Minister Wong? Senator Whittaker.
My question is to the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Wong. The Albanese Labor government's first term saw the government work to undo the reputational damage of a decade of neglect in our region. What is the government doing to deepen the relationships with countries in our region?
Thank you, Senator Whittaker. Minister Wong.
Thank you, Senator Whittaker. And if I may preface my remarks by welcoming our international guests from the European Parliament and from the National Assembly. Bienvenue. And to the members of the ADF who are present here, thank you for your service. Australia is very proud and honoured to have such women and men in the ADF serving our country, so thank you. Well, Senator, as you know, Australia's prosperity and security lie in our region, and which is why I visited every Pacific Islands Forum member and all countries of ASEAN other than Myanmar in my first year as Foreign Minister. And after a decade of neglect under those opposite, we were determined to show up, to listen and to build trust. And this is why the Prime Minister's visit to Malaysia for ASEAN meetings this week is so important. It is an opportunity to further strengthen Australia's relationships, to advocate for a peaceful, stable region, for the creation of jobs and economic growth here at home. Yesterday, as the government announced 2 new milestone investments as part of our Southeast Asia Economic Strategy to 2040, taking advantage of being part of the fastest-growing region in the world, bringing together Australian businesses and investors to expand our presence and seize the opportunities of the historic growth underway in the Indo-Pacific. We announced the government will invest $175 million into IFM Investors Asia Pacific Debt Fund and $50 million into a new Southeast Asian public-private partnership investment fund established by the Australian Infrastructure Specialist Plenary. This adds to the work we have already done to deliver almost $1 billion of new Australian investment under our Southeast Asian economic strategy. Two-way trade has increased by $6 billion between 2023 and 2024. Together, the economies of ASEAN are Australia's second-largest trading partner. This delivers jobs
Minister.
for Australians.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Whittaker, first supplementary.
On October 6, the Prime Minister signed the Papua New Guinea Mutual Defence Treaty. And last week, the government hosted the 31st Annual Australia-Papua New Guinea Ministerial Forum here in Canberra. How is the Albanese Labor government working to navigate uncertain international conditions and make Australia more secure by partnering with countries in our region to promote prosperity and stability?
Thank you, Senator Whittaker. Minister Wong.
Thank you, Senator. And as I said in my first answer, our stability, our security and our prosperity lies in our region. And this is an historic time in the story of Australia and Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea and Australia are old friends, close neighbours, and now we are allies. And last month we saw Prime Minister Albanese stand with Prime Minister Marape to celebrate 50 years of PNG's independence. And on October 6th, our two leaders signed the landmark Puk Puk Treaty, a treaty that elevates our relationship to an alliance, PNG's first and Australia's first in more than 70 years. And as you mentioned, Senator, I had the privilege last week of co-chairing the first ever Australia-PNG Ministerial Forum as allies. 20 ministers from two nations came together to demonstrate our unprecedented level of strategic trust. A stronger, safer PNG is good for PNG, good for Australia, and it is good for our region.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Whittaker, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. And clearly the Albanese Labor government is working hard with allies and partners in our region to advance our national interests, both economically and strategically. How will the government continue to deliver in Australia's national interest in the Pacific?
Thank you, Senator Whittaker. Minister Wong.
Thank you. Well, Australia will continue to be a partner the region can count on to build a stronger Pacific family. Those opposite lectured the Pacific. Those opposite mocked their priorities. And, importantly, they failed to show up when it mattered. And their disastrous performance meant we lost a decade as a nation that we are never getting back. And we do face, I've been up front, we face a permanent state of contest in the Pacific. And while Australia miserably talks Australia down, while the coalition miserably talk Australia down, our government has had transformational breakthroughs like the Puk Puk Treaty, the Pacific Policing Initiative, the Whalapila Union with Tuvalu and the Nauru-Australia Treaty. This is what Australia has been delivering under the Albanese government. This is what Labor governments are delivering, whilst you, opposite, the coalition, they're more concerned about outflanking each other. You see, they haven't realised you can't be credible in the Pacific if you continue to deny the signs of climate change.
Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Madam President. My question—
Order. Senator Canavan, I'm sorry, please resume your seat. Order on my right. Senator Canavan has the right to ask his question in silence. Senator Canavan, please start again.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm glad I inspire such a reaction. My question is to the Minister for Industry and Innovation, Senator Ayres. There are reports this morning that the Tomago aluminium smelter, which supports around 1,000 jobs in your home state of New South Wales, is looking at potential closure. Tomago CEO Jerome Dozzle laid the blame on energy costs, saying that, and I quote, "Unfortunately, all market proposals received so far show future energy prices are not commercially viable." The government says that renewable energy is cheaper, and it says that it's building lots of renewables for the future. If that is the case, why can't Tomago get an energy price in the future that is affordable?
Thank you, Senator Canavan. Minister Ayres.
Well, I can confirm that this morning management at the Tomago facility began a process of consulting with around 1,400 workers at that facility about the potential of that facility closing in 2028. And that is having had some experience in these kind of events, I can tell you that that is a very difficult day indeed, and there are going to be challenging days and weeks and months. What I wouldn't do, Senator Ruston, is disrespect workers who are having a tough day in Tomago, with the sort of hyper-partisanship that your show's engaged in. If you,
Minister Ayres, please resume your seat. Order. I sat Senator Canavan down and gave him the privilege of starting his question again because there was too much noise on the right, and I demanded that his question be heard in silence. And the same applies to those of you on the left. The minister is responding to the question, and I ask for silence. Minister Ayres.
And of course, as you would imagine, this government has been engaged in discussions with the Government of New South Wales and the owners of that facility and the trade unions engaged in that facility over the future of that facility for some time. And we will continue that work over the coming month and months as we work with that facility. It's also the case that more broadly across the aluminium sector in Queensland and in Tasmania, facilities owned by Rio Tinto as a part owner of the Tomago facility are working through their future power purchasing agreements. In Queensland, the Gladstone facility has been successfully engaged in investment and underwriting solar and wind projects in Queensland, and I'm grateful for the assistance of the Government of Queensland in supporting that work. There is a competition.
Senator Canavan, first supplementary.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Minister, last week the CEO of Jamestrong, who are a metals manufacturing business in Taree, also in your home state, said that the annual power price for our factory has almost doubled in 4 years. We are decommissioning our baseload power of coal and gas. We are going to renewables and the cost is spiking. That's what he said. He's a business owner. He's on the front lines. Minister, if renewable energy is cheaper, why is it causing the cost of energy to spike for New South Wales manufacturing businesses?
Your time for asking has expired. Minister Ayres.
Well, Senator Canavan, you moved off the situation in Tomago pretty quickly. You moved off it pretty quickly because the facts at that facility don't support your argument. They don't support your argument. And you would have thought that you'd give it a few minutes, for workers to adjust to this thing, like returning like a sort of koala to his favourite tree.
Senator Canavan, you don't need to call out. I do notice you're standing, and I will come to you, Senator Canavan.
Thank you. Just on relevance, a point on relevance. The question, both questions, have been about if renewable energy is cheaper, why is the cost of energy going up? The minister is not going anywhere near dealing with that question. That's the crucial question.
Thank you, Senator Canavan. Senator McKenzie, come to order. I'll draw the minister back to your first supplementary. Minister Ayres.
Thank you. And on that question, that part of the question that you refer to, well, Rio and the owners have been very clear, in their public statements that there is neither coal-fired nor renewable electricity that they are seeking in the market at the moment. That has been their statement. There is a competition for green energy in the future from these companies. That is what is.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Canavan, second supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. Minister, if you can't guarantee lower energy prices for Australian factories, how are we going to help deliver the critical minerals and rare earths to secure industrial supply chains in the free world?
Thank you, Senator Canavan. Minister Ayres.
Well, the evidence is very clear. It's very clear. There are two trajectories. If you don't want to listen,
order.
Come on. If you don't want to listen, Senator Canavan, if you don't want to listen, Spark up, Sparky. Come on.
Order across the chamber.
Come on.
Minister
Honestly.
Ayres, Minister Ayres, order across the chamber. Order. Order across the chamber. Minister Ayres, please continue.
It's impossible to engage seriously with this kind of behaviour and this kind of hyper-partisanship and this kind of imported ideology. It's impossible to engage with it. The truth is there are two trajectories. There is an orderly process of modernising our electricity system, and that requires work and it requires policy consistency and policy certainty. There's a disorderly approach authored by your colleague Angus Taylor, Mr Taylor, that banked on industry being forced offshore. Your nuclear plan banked on forcing industry offshore.
Expired. Senator Hodgins-May.
Thank you, President. My question is for the Minister for Early Childhood Education. Minister, last night's chilling Four Corners episode revealed that pedophiles are using the dark web to share detailed manuals on how to infiltrate children's centres, abuse children and avoid detection. It identified almost 150 educators who have been convicted, charged or accused of sexual abuse or other inappropriate conduct in centres between 2021 and 2024. And it found that the abuse overwhelmingly occurs in for-profit centres where cost-cutting, high staff turnover and weak supervision combine to create a, quote, perfect storm. Given the severity of these revelations and the fact that children's safety is directly at stake, why did you not, as the relevant minister, appear on Four Corners to answer questions about these crises in our childcare system?
I thank you, Senator Hodgins-May. Minister Walsh.
Thank you, thank you, Senator. Well, the reports last night and over the last couple of days have been absolutely horrific and absolutely confronting, and they really have been every parent's worst nightmare. And what is important, of course, is that we put in place a strong and comprehensive package of measures to help keep children safe in early childhood education, and that is exactly what we have done. And in answer to your specific question, Senator, I have appeared on the ABC 5 times on this topic, talking about this strong and comprehensive package of reforms that we are delivering. One of the aspects of the reports last night and over the last couple of days, I think, was the scale of the issues that we are facing, which are significant and which are horrific. And, of course, our job in the early childhood education and care portfolio is to make sure that we can support those educators and those providers who are doing the right thing and shut the door on those educators and providers who are out there and who are seeking to do harm. And so we stood shoulder to shoulder with our state and territory counterparts back in August and delivered a strong and comprehensive package of reform, including the first ever nationwide register of early childhood educators, including mandatory training for early childhood educators.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hodgins-May, first supplementary.
Minister, Minister, you keep saying your focus is on quality, but the ABC has repeatedly exposed for-profit providers where profit comes before safety, where cost-cutting and high staff turnover are putting children at risk. Non-profit centres regularly exceed quality standards because they invest in educators, not shareholders. When will you start listening to educators, parents and the evidence and stop putting the profits of private equity ahead of our children's safety?
Minister Walsh.
Thank you, President. You talk in your question there about the for-profit providers, we have been clear that our message to providers who put profit ahead of child safety is that they need to lift their game or leave the sector. And that's why, as a parliament, we passed strong legislation to make sure that we can withdraw Commonwealth childcare subsidy from those providers who do put profit ahead of safety. But, Senator, I would also draw your attention to some of the reporting of Ms Ferguson this week, who pointed out that not all, and I quote, for-profit centres are bad and all not-for-profit centres are good. Not all small providers are necessarily better than those owned by larger corporations. Our priority is to keep children safe wherever they are in early learning.
Thank you, Minister Walsh. Senator Hodgins-May, second supplementary.
Minister, the New South Wales and ACT branch of the Independent Union of Australia says the ECEC workforce is in crisis and overwhelmed by low pay, burnout and staff shortage. We know the Fair Work Commission's expert panel has already issued a provisional decision recommending pay rises up to 28.4%. Given the current educator retention payment ends in November 2026, will you commit to funding the Fair Work decisions, including full wage parity, to retain experienced staff, stem the exodus educators and safeguard children's care?
Thank you, Senator Hodgins-May. Your time has expired. Minister Walsh.
Thank you, President. Well, we know that early childhood educators are absolutely the best asset that we have in keeping children safe and delivering quality early childhood education. And that is why we are the government who has delivered a historic 15% pay rise to this incredibly hard-working workforce. These are the people, 99.9% of them, who are going in every day to do the best job they can to keep Australian children safe, to care for them, to educate for them. Under those opposite, they were undervalued for 10 long years. They were underpaid for 10 long years. We are the government who has provided a 15% pay rise, and it is paying dividends not just for the educators themselves, who can now afford to stay in jobs that they love, but also for the children in their care by providing a stable, long-term, quality workforce. And it is our government, Senator, who has delivered that.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Dowling.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Health, Disability and Ageing, Senator McAllister. In its first term, the Albanese Labor government delivered 87 Medicare urgent care clinics to make it easier for Australians to get urgent treatment they need completely free of charge. Minister, how is the government delivering Medicare urgent care clinics across Australia, and how are they helping Australians to access the health care that they need?
Thank you, Senator Dowling. Minister McAllister.
Well, thank you, President, and I thank Senator Dowling for his question. So in May, the Australian people voted for a government that would strengthen Medicare, and the Albanese government is doing that through our program to roll out Medicare urgent care clinics right across Australia. When we came to government, we promised 50 urgent care clinics that would deliver bulk-billed care for urgent but non-life-threatening conditions. And how many urgent care clinics has the government delivered so far? Well, colleagues, the answer is 90. It's 90 clinics. And I can inform this chamber that Australians have made more than 2 million visits to Labor's free Medicare urgent care clinics. And the average number of visits to Medicare urgent care clinics has also risen to almost 26,000 per week nationally. And we expect this number to grow. We expect it to grow as more clinics open. Urgent care clinics are a game changer for families. 1/3 of patients are under the age of 15. And people don't pay $1 to access these urgent care clinics. All they need is their Medicare card, not their credit card. And these clinics are changing the way that people access health care. So the Albanese government is expanding the availability of free urgent health care by opening another 47 Medicare urgent care clinics, Senator Dowling. That is 14 new clinics in New South Wales, 9 in Victoria, 10 in Queensland, 6 in Western Australia, 3 in South Australia, 1 in the Northern Territory, 1 in the ACT and 3 more in Tasmania, Senator Dowling. And once we open the full range of urgent care clinics, 4 out of 5 Australians will live within a 20-minute drive of an urgent care clinic. That is us delivering healthcare for Australians.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Dowling, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Minister, for that uplifting update on our urgent care clinics. Can the minister outline how our local health services are benefiting from the government's model of urgent care, and how are Medicare urgent care clinics being integrated with existing health and hospital services, especially hospital emergency departments?
Thank you, Senator Dowling. Minister McAllister.
Thank you, President. Well, we now know that nearly half of all patients who attended a Medicare urgent care clinic would have used a hospital emergency department if no clinic were available. And Senator Dowling, 2 weeks ago, Tasmania's 5 Medicare urgent care clinics treated 1,586 patients. Now, this is more than the Royal Hobart Hospital Emergency Department and nearly double Launceston General Hospital. So urgent care clinics don't just provide relief for public hospitals, they take pressure off general practice right across the country too, because their extended opening hours provide services when regular GP practices are closed. Nearly 30% of visits to Medicare urgent care clinics have taken place on weekends, and 25% of patients have attended after 5 p.m. on weekdays. And these clinics are filling a gap in our healthcare system, and they are giving our hospitals and GPs the support they need.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Dowling, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, could you advise how our Medicare urgent care clinics complement other actions that the Albanese Labor government is taking to strengthen Medicare and also improve Australia's primary healthcare system? And why has the government chosen this approach?
Thank you, Senator Dowling. Minister McAllister.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Dowling. Well, the Albanese Labor government is delivering the largest ever investment in the history of Medicare, $8.5 billion, to expand bulk billing and create an additional new incentive payment for practices that bulk bill every patient. And it begins to roll out from Saturday, November 1. And it means that 9 out of 10 GP visits will be bulk billed by 2030, and fully bulk billed practices will grow to around 4,800 nationally, triple the current number. And the government has already heard from hundreds of practices who've told us that this week they're charging a gap fee, and next week they'll be moving to a fully bulk billed service. And this investment is the cornerstone of our plan to rebuild bulk billing after a decade of coalition neglect, which saw billions ripped out of Medicare. Because we believe—
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Faruqi.
Thank you, President. My question is to Minister Wong. Minister, Israel continues to starve Gaza by blocking food, water and humanitarian aid. Fewer than 100 aid trucks enter daily since the so-called ceasefire, far short of the 600 required by the supposed peace plan. The International Court of Justice has ordered Israel to allow unimpeded access, yet this has been ignored. In order to try and break Israel's illegal blockade, brave Australian humanitarians were part of the global Samud flotilla to deliver life-saving food, medical supplies and baby formula to Gaza. They were illegally abducted by Israel in international waters and imprisoned. Abu Bakr Rafiq, Juliet Lamont, Hamish Patterson, Bianca Webb-Pullman and Surya McEwen have publicly spoken about the physical and psychological abuse they were subjected to. Minister, what have you done to hold Israel to account for its treatment of Australians?
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Minister Wong.
Thank you very much, President. Firstly, in relation to the Gaza flotilla, I would actually say to the senator that people from the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade work very hard to support Australians who are detained in Israel. We had diplomats travel to Ketziot multiple times, conducted in-person visits and welfare checks, and our officials did as we requested, which is to advocate to the Israeli authorities on behalf of Australians and provide updates to detainees' families. Officials also worked with Israeli authorities to ensure the release and deportation of Australians. and they continue to provide consular assistance. In relation to the flotilla, we do understand that people want to help deliver aid to those suffering in Gaza. We also want to see critical aid delivered. However, the government has warned against attempts to breach the naval blockade because of the risks to the safety of Australians. In relation to the humanitarian crisis, as you would know, Australia has committed more than $130 million in humanitarian assistance to civilians in Gaza and Lebanon since 7 October 2023. I am aware there have been allegations of mistreatment. We have made clear to Israel our expectation that detainees will receive humane treatment in line with international norms. We have raised the welfare and treatment of Australians who are detained with Israel, both in Tel Aviv and in Canberra. Obviously, and as you would know, I think you've asked me this question, Senator, also in estimates, where I suspect I gave you the same answer, we are always constrained in relation to specific individuals because of our privacy obligations.
Thank you, Minister Wong. Senator Faruqi, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. 2024 was the deadliest year on record for aid workers, with Gaza remaining the most dangerous place in the world and Israeli attacks killing hundreds of aid workers. Australian aid worker Zomi Francom's killers continue to walk free, and not a single person or entity has been sanctioned for her killing. You've signed on to the Declaration of the Protection of Humanitarian Personnel, Minister, but words without accountability protect no one. Minister, do you support comprehensive sanctions against states that attack and kill humanitarian workers?
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Well, Senator, we didn't just sign on to the declaration, we drove it. We drove it. Australia drove a multilateral declaration because we wanted to make sure that we could respond to the fact that 2024 was the deadliest year for humanitarian workers the world has seen, and because we were also committed to the memory of Zomi Francom, who was killed in an IDF strike. And I made clear to her family and to the Australian people that we would not only ensure that we had Mr Binskin, a former CDF, engage with the IDF and provide a report to us, which I announce, but I also said we want to make sure we do what we can to ensure that this doesn't happen to another aid worker. And we drove a multilateral declaration, and you may dismiss it, Senator, but 104 countries signed on the first day. On the first day. That is diplomacy.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Faruqi, second supplementary.
Minister, your answers make it clear that your declaration for the protection of humanitarian personnel amounts to nothing more than empty words from a government pretending to uphold human rights while doing nothing to hold the abusers to account. Minister, when will you stop pretending to care about human rights and actually hold Israel accountable instead of issuing press releases as people starve and die?
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Just hang on a minute. Senator Watt, are you on a point of order?
You may be addressing this, President, but I was going to just point out there was an imputation there and it should be withdrawn.
There was an imputation there, Senator Faruqi, and I'm going to ask you to reframe the question. So withdraw and reframe.
Minister, when will your government pretend to stop caring about human rights and actually hold Israel accountable instead of issuing press releases while people starve and die?
Senator Faruqi, I did ask you to withdraw. You withdrew, and then you continued with the framing of the question, which offends the Senate. So I'm asking you to reframe the question without causing offence. Thank you, Senator Faruqi.
I will withdraw, but it seems like everything that comes out of my mouth seems to offend this Senate.
Senator Faruqi,
but
Senator Faruqi, order. Order across the chamber. Order. Order across the chamber. Order. No, Senator Whish-Wilson, I will come to you. Senator Faruqi, when I ask senators to withdraw, I expect them to simply withdraw, not to add any other comment, and you are no different to any other senator in this place. Now, I will now go to Senator Whish-Wilson.
Just a clarification of a point of order. You used the frame "offend the Senate." Are you saying that what Senator Faruqi said was unparliamentary? And can you explain?
Whish-Wilson, you are on a debating point with me.
No, I'm asking for a very important clarification.
Thank you, Senator Whish-Wilson. I think I was fairly clear that the order. You're not arguing with me. You are not arguing with me. If what I'm trying to do, and I will remind all senators in this place of the motion we passed yesterday, which talked about respect for one another. Now, if there's an imputation, and there was, and Senator Faruqi withdrew, and I gave her the privilege of repeating the question, I don't expect it to continue along a similar vein. You are not in a debate with me. If you wish to make a comment later in the day, avail yourself of free time. Right now, you are not in a debate. No, Senator Whish-Wilson, I'm not entertaining any more points of order. Please resume your seat. Please resume your seat, and I remind you, if you need to reread the motion that this Senate passed yesterday about respect. Senator Faruqi, I ask you to just simply ask the question of the government.
President, this is a complete farce. I'm not reframing my question.
Fine. Thank you, Senator Faruqi. That is your point of view. You are free to hold that, and I will ask the minister to answer the question.
Well, Senator, here we are with the the Greens political party essentially reflecting Scott Morrison's policy that they don't like multilateralism. Well, we are proud multilateralists because we understand that working with other countries, excuse me, I'm on my feet, please. Working with other countries is one of the ways in which we can support international humanitarian law, protect human rights and protect the system that protects us. But while we were doing multilateralism, what are the Greens doing? They are using this crisis to seek donations. Using this crisis to seek donations. I was surprised to read that on October 7th, on the second anniversary of the attacks, they sent out an email calling for donations, not for charity, but for the Greens political party.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Order. Order across the chamber. Order. Order. Senator Shoebridge. Order. Senator Shoebridge, come to order. Order. Senator Patterson. Senator Whish-Wilson.
Point of order, President. Senator Wong just talk about imputations. She just made a very direct imputation about the Greens. What is different to that versus the imputation that Senator Faruqi made about the Australian Greens? Could you pull her up on that, please, and ask her to withdraw?
Resume your seat. Senator, order. Order. I will take advice from that. I don't think it was an imputation. I am advised that it was a statement of a political party taking an action. I will listen. Order! Order! I remind you all, Senator Shoebridge, you are being very disrespectful. Senator Shoebridge, withdraw that comment.
I withdraw it.
Thank you. I'm now going to move on. Order! Order! 3 times I've reminded the Senate of the motion that was passed in here yesterday about the need for respect, and all I'm hearing now is a lot of disrespect. Senator David Pocock.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Resources, Minister Ayres. First off, congratulations on inking this huge $8.5 billion critical minerals deal with the United States. The Minerals Council claims that these deals could add 170.
I'm sorry, Senator Pocock. Please resume your seat. Order. Order across the chamber. Senator Pocock, please continue.
Thank you, President. The Minerals Council claims that these deals could add $170 billion in GDP. What mechanism is the government putting in place to ensure that Australians get a fair cut of this potential new boom industry exploiting Australian resources that we own, and how will you make sure that we don't squander the opportunity like we've done with exporting of gas?
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister Ayres.
Thank you, Senator Pocock, for that question. And that set of ideas about how Australia ought to make sure that Australia's natural assets are used to the benefit of Australia, our national interest, but also making sure that we are not just exporting ore overseas, that we are processing rare earths and critical minerals here for the benefit of our partners who invest in these projects is absolutely what has framed not just this partnership with the United States and our critical minerals approach more broadly, but also our broader Future Made in Australia approach. It is absolutely about making sure that Australia uses the unique advantages that we have. Almost all of these minerals that are required as the world shifts, its industrial processes, its communications technology, its computational capability, defence technologies, into technologies that require critical minerals and rare earths, Australia is in a unique position. All of the minerals that you'd want to have underneath the ground, enormous amounts of space, enormous wind and solar reserves that mean that for almost all of the economies who are seeking clean and green production methods, that we can deliver them here in Australia. That is what this partnership's about. Delighted to see that it came with a series of practical investments in real projects.
Senator David Pocock, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, it's unclear from your answer how much Australians will actually get for exploiting our resources. Last time Labor was in power, you signed export gas agreements, multi-billion, multi-decadal agreements, which has really seen us not benefit that much at all for offshore LNG. Petroleum resource rent tax is set to decline. Japan is making over $1 billion on selling our gas. 1 in 7 Australians now living in poverty. What is the plan for critical minerals to actually ensure that Australians benefit from Australian resources?
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister Ayres.
Well, the first thing that we want to do, Senator Pocock, is make sure, as you say, this is not just about extraction of resources. This is about processing and production onshore here in Australia. And that means real things in real outer suburban and regional communities that need good jobs and need investment. And you know, on the tax front, and we see these questions more broadly than just the tax questions, of course. So in national interest terms, national security and economic resilience terms, in employment and industry capability terms. But the resources sector does make a very significant contribution in tax terms, $48.5 billion in company tax in 23-24.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Pocock, second supplementary.
Minister, we've heard the same argument with gas. Jobs, jobs, jobs. And yet what I hear from people is that they can't actually find workers to fill jobs. When it comes to offshore LNG, Treasury tells us that we haven't had a single cent of petroleum resource rent tax. We've now got critical minerals. We look at Norway with trillions of dollars in a sovereign wealth fund, and it sounds like the Albanese government doesn't actually have a plan to effectively tax critical minerals, despite you saying this is a huge part of our economic prosperity.
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister Ayres.
Well, as I said, $48.5 billion in company tax in 23-24. The 4 companies that paid the most company tax in Australia 23-24 were resources companies. 7 of the 10 top corporate taxpayers were from the resources sector. Labor's focus when it comes to tax has included changing the petroleum resources rent tax so that companies pay tax sooner. But our approach on gas is gas is going to be absolutely central for
Senator
Australian
McKim.
industry. That's why, in terms of a gas market, that I think everybody who's engaged in the gas market at the moment, whether it's industry, whether it's onshore manufacturing, wants to see change in the gas market settings, and that's the process that this government has embarked upon.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Whitten.
Thank you, President. My question is for the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Minister Ayres. What percentage of annual global CO2 emissions is Australia responsible for? I'll give you a hint, it's 1%.
Thank you, Senator Whitten. I think the whole point of question time is you ask the questions and the minister answers them, but I'll call Minister Ayres. Minister Ayres.
Well, Senator, you know, I haven't quite reached the point in this place where I'm asking and answering my own questions. I'm not sure that that's a really helpful way of characterising what is important in Australia's national interest here. It is true that our onshore Scope 1 and 2 emissions, I think it's a larger number than the one that you quote, somewhere between 1% and 2%. Australia is a very high per capita emitter. So per person, even though that is a small amount in global terms, in individual terms, we do have a responsibility here. But it's also true that it is in Australia's national interest for the world to move on these questions. So that is why we are engaged in the international framework agreements to use our contribution to make sure that we're an effective participant as the world moves. So that is one rationale. Secondly, Australia, more than any other country on earth, other than perhaps our friends in our near region in the Pacific, has more to lose and more to gain from failure on climate and energy policy than any other nation on earth. Our farmers, our coastal communities, our outer suburbs where lifts in temperature create terrible conditions for working people to live in. Like, it is absolutely in our interest. Bushfires that...
Member Black-Summer.
Thank you, Minister Ayres. Senator Whitten, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. That was a long answer. I gave you the answer, but what percentage of man-made emissions are attributable to the 3 biggest CO2 emitters, China, USA and India, and have their total emissions increased or decreased over the past 5 years?
Thank you, Senator Whitten. Minister Ayres.
Well, Senator, you did say it was a long answer. It was the regulation 2 minutes. Well, that's what we do here. You did then go on to talk about the top 2 emitters, and you named 3. But we'll work within the sort of framework you're trying to give me. That's why it's in Australia's interest to drive international cooperation and legally binding frameworks. That's why it is that we, as a middle-sized economy, rely upon international cooperation to drive that kind of change. Now we are seeing progress. We are seeing progress. And as I said, it's in our interest to see that progress. As our competitors and our partner economies, as their industries change, Australia cannot afford to be left
Thank you, Minister. The
in
time
industrial
for answering has
terms.
expired. Senator Whitten, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. A recent study has shown China produces Australia's yearly emissions every 12 days, while they increase their CO2 emissions each year. Even if this climate apocalypse you preach is really coming, Australia couldn't stop it, and the three biggest polluters don't care. Why then would we cripple our economy and decimate our industry on the cusp of what Labor describes as a climate disaster?
Thank you, Senator Whitten. Minister Ayres.
Well, there is an emerging convergence here, I notice, between One Nation and the Greens political party in dismissing the importance of international frameworks. Yeah. That is true. It's sort of interesting. But I think most Australians want to see credible action on climate change. They want to see international progress because they accept the science. Now, I know you and your colleagues don't accept the science. I know that most of these characters over here don't accept the science. But science is a real thing. Science is a real thing. I know you say it's not. I just say to you, it is an incontrovertible fact that increased carbon emissions in the atmosphere are causing temperatures to rise. And that is a real question that hard-headed people must engage with in an adult kind of way. And that means our industries are up for the challenge.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Stewart.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Indigenous Australians, Senator McCarthy. The Albanese Labor government is focused on closing the gap so that all Australians have the same opportunities in life. No one is held back and no one is left behind. At supplementary budget estimates earlier this month, for the first time, closing the gap outcomes were featured in programs across all committees throughout the week. How did this change affect the way closing the gap was discussed at estimates?
Thank you, Senator Stewart. Minister McCarthy.
I thank the senator for the question, President. When the Senate voted to agree to the schedule change for the recent estimates hearing, it was more than a minor programming change. It was structural change to the way First Nations issues are scrutinised by the Senate. Previously, closing the gap in First Nations issues were confined to a separate day, treated separately at the end of the week. That meant departmental secretaries and ministers across government didn't need to answer questions on closing the gap. But at these recent estimates hearings, that all changed. All 17 closing the gap outcomes were clearly outlined in the program for the very first time across the 6 Senate committees. The time dedicated to First Nations issues more than tripled. And, President, at estimates, we saw just how successful that change to the program was for scrutiny of closing the gap. I'm delighted to report that, when combined, we saw 11 hours of actual questions asked and answers delivered, scrutinising First Nations issues and closing the gap at estimates. That's 5.5 hours of questions and answers in committees on top of the time dedicated for NIAA and Indigenous portfolio bodies. Senators were able to ask questions of the right portfolios, reflecting that closing the gap is a whole-of-government commitment. This was an enormous achievement for accountability on closing the gap, and I congratulate my colleagues and I congratulate the Senate.
Thank you, Senator McCarthy. Order! 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 Senator Stewart, first supplementary.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Minister, for that answer. What did these changes mean in practice at estimates? How did that increase in the amount of time devoted to closing the gap play out in the way that questions were asked across committees throughout the week?
Minister McCarthy.
Well, President, I thank the senator for this really important question because, in short, it worked. It absolutely worked. Through the week, departmental secretaries faced those questions and, for example, it meant Senator Cox asking the Attorney-General's Department about justice reinvestment. Senator Ananda Raja asking the Department of Health questions about First Nations suicide prevention. Senator Mulholland asking Department of Education about First Nations and the Better and Fairer Schools Agreement. And also, President, Senator Waters asking about perimenopause and First Nations women. Senator Thorpe about youth justice. And Senator Little, yes, I'm coming to you, asking about income management. Thank you, Senator Little. But more than that, because First Nations issues weren't relegated to Friday, it meant questions were even asked when Closing the Gap wasn't on the program, like Senator Delija asking about Central Australia infrastructure, Senator Hodgkins-May asking about Indigenous
The time for answering has expired. Order. Order. Senator Stewart, second supplementary.
Thank you very much. I'm sure our Labor colleagues would have appreciated that extra time. How will these changes to the estimate schedule contribute to the Albanese Labor government's work to drive efforts across government to close the gap?
Minister McCarthy.
President, these changes are what delivering on priority reform 3 of the National Agreement on Closing the Gap means. And this is the Senate making structural changes to how government considers First Nations issues. That's what this is about. In terms of the Senate's responsibility, we are walking the walk. Meanwhile, those opposite may be talking, they may be balking, but they're not walking. So let's not forget. Thanks, Senator Ruston.
They're balking and they're gawking.
Let's not forget when the Senate voted for these changes, we had Senator Cash and Senator Duniam, who's been quite silent over there, carrying on about how the sky would fall in if we moved to this. But let me tell you, Senators, it worked very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Minister Wong.
I ask that further questions be placed on notice.